Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Daily Objective for a very special weekend edition. What brings us here on in the middle of the weekend, you might be wondering? Don't we have a life? Yes, we do, but something happened on Twitter. Now, you might not believe this, or you might have already seen this. There's a lot to unpack about this. Some things are going to be kind of glaringly positive about what Amazon was tweeting. So this was between Amazon and Senator Warren. There's a lot of good about it. I'm sure we'll get into. I think I'll at least point out a couple negative potential things that could come with something like this. But we'll get into all of that in just a little bit. Let's welcome two very rare people on the show. First, we've got somebody who we pray to have on the show often. He's rare to attain. It's Lord Emperor himself, Razi Ginzberg. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Rucka.
And we've got, we're always disclaiming the show saying, hey, look, we're not philosophers. Don't listen to anything we say. But today we've actually got a philosopher. He's written about objectivism and about philosophy. He lectures, he writes, he publishes. And it's rare to have him on the show as well. And even more rare, I think, for his name to be properly pronounced. I believe it's Greg Salmieri. Is that it?
Well, if you pronounce it that way, you've got it more right than I do. So.
Oh, is it just Salmieri, like it's spelled out?
Yeah, I just pronounce it like it's spelled. I'm not sure how actual Italians pronounce it.
I thought. Sorry to make the episode about this, but I thought I heard you say once it's just two syllables, Salmieri.
Salmieri, I don't know.
I must have misunderstood.
Having names originating in languages that you don't speak is you always feel a little bit, how to say it. Anyway,
all right. Anyway, with the several moments we have left on the show now, let's why don't I share my screen so everybody could see the world through my perspective. Here is the tweets in question. We've got Senator Warren. She tweeted, giant corporations like Amazon report huge profits to their shareholders, but they exploit loopholes and tax havens to pay close to nothing in taxes. That's just not right. And it's why I'll be introducing a bill to make the most profitable companies pay a fair share. To which Amazon News replied, you make the tax laws, Senator Warren. We just follow them. If you don't like the laws you've created, by all means, change them. Here are the facts. Amazon has paid billions of dollars in corporate taxes over the past few years alone. In 2020, we had another 1.7 billion in federal tax expenses, and that's on top of the 18 billion we generated in sales taxes for states and localities in the US. Congress designed tax laws to encourage investment in the economy. So what have we done about that? $350 billion in investments since 2010 and 400,000 new US jobs last year alone. And while you're working on changing the tax code, can we please raise the federal minimum wage to $15? And then Elizabeth Warren replied to that saying, I didn't write the loopholes you exploit, Amazon. Your armies of lawyers and lobbyists did. But you bet I'll fight to make you pay your fair share and fight your union busting and fight to break up big tech so you're not powerful enough to heckle senators with snotty tweets. And then Amazon came back with, this is extraordinary and revealing. One of the most powerful politicians in the United States just said she's going to break up an American company so that they can't criticize her anymore. Well, a lot to unpack there, I suppose. So, Greg, anything come to mind?
Yeah, well, Elizabeth Warren, I think of as one of the worst people in American politics. I've thought this for years and years now. She was began the kind of you didn't build that rhetoric, or already brought it mainstream into politics even before Obama. She's an egalitarian in the worst sense. She's a hater of successful companies, and she's exported this rhetoric to other politicians left and right. And the particular targeting of Amazon is really ugly. And there's a lot to say about the precedents and the history for this and just how wrong it is for a politician to do this. But one of the things that really stands out is Amazon pushing back, and Amazon saying this is a powerful person in the American government a powerful politician saying they want to break up a company for saying mean things about them. And we need more of that. And so I think Amazon should really be applauded for taking a kind of a stand here and a stand on the right principle. In that last tweet, some of the earlier ones had some really things wrong with them. But the principle is this is a politician who's supposed to be a defender of the Constitution, somebody helping to implement the Constitution, saying she wants to break up a company because they said something mean about her. That is really despicable. And it's admirable for the victim of that persecution to point it out.
A real blending of ideas, which is what we have in the culture we live in, and that's the economy as well that's being discussed here. And Amazon's basic argument to me sounds like a utilitarian one, like, hey, we've created all this job, we've paid all these taxes that you're making us pay. If you want us to pay more, then write the taxes differently. So so Amazon, I mean, to look at it a little bit more negatively is they're telling the government, let's do this together. This is all going to be a team effort. We'll engineer the economy and engineer society the way that benefits the most people, but don't single us out for playing by the rules that you have a bigger part in playing. Razi, it's unusual for you to be on the show. You must have some thoughts to share.
Yeah, it's unusual for me to be on the show, and this is the first time we've had a weekend show. We had shows on Christmas and Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve, but a Saturday or a Sunday, this is the first time. And yeah, when I saw the tweet, the particularly impressive tweet that starts with "This is extraordinary and revealing," it was obvious to me that this is going to be Monday's episode. And then I saw Don Watkins' tweet, which said, "I hope Amazon stands behind this tweet. And if not, there's going to be an out-of-work social media manager who deserves a GoFundMe campaign." And I kind of thought, you know what, maybe this is, something they're going to apologize for. And before they do, let's celebrate this moment, because I do think it's not just that they are pushing back against a powerful politician. It's also they're so impressively identifying the nature of her attack, and the fact that she is saying it is you arguing with me that makes me want to break you up as a company. That's really terrifying to hear from a politician, and a senior one, and one that has the power to potentially do that. So yeah, well done to Amazon, and let's hope that's the start of something, and not an outlier that we're.
Sadly, this isn't the first time Amazon has been in the crosshairs over this particular issue by senior American politicians, and it's not the first time we've had this kind of threat. Trump was always tweeting about Amazon and Jeff Bezos's ownership of the Post, and wanting to break them up for that reason. And Trump, Cruz, and Sanders are like three peas in a pod on their hatred of one of the most virtuous companies in world history for its virtue, and of Bezos. But also, and I expect there are cases before Trump, but the other one that really stands out as a tweet is there was two Trump tweets at different times, one in 2018 and one in 2019, criticizing SNL for mocking him more than his opponents, and saying at one point that he wanted a federal investigation into it, and at one point he thought they should be taken to court for it. So here again, you see politicians threatening private companies, in this case, somebody with executive power, which is even worse, but threatening private companies, which I think is wrong to begin with, and then doing it particularly for them exercising their free speech rights against him. And in Trump's case, there was a certain kind of plausible semi-pretext to it, which is he was kind of indicating that maybe it violates campaign finance laws in some way, which on the one hand it doesn't, but on the other hand, the campaign finance laws are a tremendous injustice that allows this, this kind of slippery slope from them, which are already major First Amendment violations, to empowering politicians to control people's speech, and in particular, political speech.
Yeah, this has the potential to become a big partisan thing. Of course, Elizabeth Warren kind of represents, to a lot of people, like the biggest leftist in the world. And so to see a company punch back at her is thrilling for a lot of people that are Republican. But of course, I mean, Republicans got a thrill out of seeing Amazon and other so-called big tech companies dragged into Congress and interrogated. And this has the potential to become something making the culture even more chaotic. If companies get in the habit of giving their opinion and of sort of mouthing off, even though we might like most of what Amazon said, or a lot of what Amazon said in this case, I don't want to live in a world where every brand now has a dog in every fight, and Coca-Cola has an opinion on abortion, and Wendy's has an opinion on gun rights. Just like I'm more a fan. Like I would have preferred to see Bezos or another person tweeting this at Elizabeth Warren rather than Amazon News with just a logo. I want logos to not have an opinion. I want logos to just be logos. Either of you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I have a thought on the partisan thing, which is that actually would be great if this was a partisan thing, because that would imply that there's a party that's on the side of freedom. But yeah, as Greg pointed out, if you look up some of Tucker Carlson's attacks on Amazon, he uses Marxist language, like really Marxist language, I think Greg is right. The reason for this is that they own a newspaper that criticizes Trump. So.
Tucker Carlson also takes talking points directly from Elizabeth Warren on this and acknowledged having done so. There's not on this, on the economics, there's very little difference right now from the left and the right, particularly in their views in America of large, successful internet companies. On other issues there are, but so it's really, that's something that's really frightening. On the issue of the logos talking back versus the people, I don't know what I think about that. I mean, I think it's, in general, when companies are getting involved in politics and having an opinion on every issue, I agree that's something that shouldn't, that's sort of unseemly, and just it seems like it's not a good move culturally. But here we have a senator directly, even prior to the stuff about free speech, right? She's directly commenting on and attacking a company and citing them as an example of what she wants to fight with legislation. And it seems like the company's PR department, or it seems like it makes sense for a company to respond to that. And I don't, they're not the ones that's starting it. They've been singled out, and I think when you're singled out by a politician, you have to be able to respond. And so I think it's fine for the company to be responding, but there is, I would have preferred a more serious tone than the snark to begin with. But all of that is eclipsed by now her saying, we want to break you up so you can't talk back to me, which is basically what she's saying here.
Yeah, and I think she's playing the victim. And I'll compare it to AOC. Not that I necessarily disagree with AOC's fear during the storming of the Capitol in January, but AOC famously said, like, I was afraid for my life, or I thought I was nearly killed. She's used language like that, which has been mocked by a lot of people. And I think Elizabeth Warren, she's sort of playing the victim, kind of like how dare you harass me? I'm just doing my job here, trying to, implement some laws, and I've got this, I've got you harassing me over Twitter. That's kind of how I interpreted that. So that's sort of what came to mind.
Yeah, and again, President Trump saying presidential harassment. Oh, they're harassing me. When you wield the force of the government and you're singling out private individuals or companies, you're doing the harassing. And I don't think, in the case of AOC in Congress, there's some issues about what she said when and whether it was taken out of context. And I don't know exactly what she did say, but maybe she was exaggerating. But she was someone who was in a building that was being stormed by armed people. What is Amazon saying back to Elizabeth Warren, and what were people saying back to Trump? You are wrong about this, is basically what Amazon is saying. And you're wrong to be singling us out. And we disagree with your politics. That is not harassment. If you can't, if that's like the people who saying anything they disagree with, these kind of snowflake people, saying anything you disagree with endangers me because it makes my cortisol levels go up and etc. That's there's no victimization, there's no harassment. Warren's a public figure on a public platform, making a public statement. about changes to the law she wants for the sake of cutting certain companies down to size. And she's naming the companies. And if anyone's doing harassing, it's her in doing that. And their responding is no kind of harassment. Maybe it's snarky, but they have every right to be snarky.
Yeah, they do. And my comparison with AOC's statement was not my most fleshed out thought ever. By the way, thank you, Jonathan Honig, for the super chat. Thank you, Nathan, for the super chat. And thank you, Jeff in Canada, for the $25 Canadian. Looks like the Canadians love these impromptu daily objectives and want to show their support. Thank you all for the super chats. So do you guys, I know we can't really prove this, but do you think we're seeing some of Ayn Rand's influence in the culture when companies sort of talk back, or is it just way too soon to tell? Any thoughts on that from either of you?
When I read the tweet, I thought, that could have been written by an objectivist, but that's as far as this goes in this case. But Greg is the person to talk about that.
Well, Amazon's first tweet certainly didn't read like an objectivist wrote it, and didn't read like Ayn Rand's influence. And Rucka, you pointed out that there were complex, some things really wrong with that one. It would be interesting to talk about that. But yeah, the second tweet is taking a real moral stand. It's, I think, the right stand to take, and it's a stand I, as an objectivist, would say to take. I think other objectivist intellectuals would. But a senator saying she wants to change the law in order to break up a company so that it can't criticize her is so far over the line that anyone with any shred of memory of what America is about ought to be offended by that. And I think, and I would like to think and do think, that there are people in America, even without an Ayn Rand influence, who can see how bad and how wrong that is. And some of them might think of themselves as conservatives. Some of them might think of themselves as liberals, and whatever they think of themselves as, who think, yeah, free speech is a right. And that means whatever I think of Amazon, whatever I think of any other company, the idea of an elected official saying, we want to break up this company so that they won't be in a position to say things about me, that is really gross. And it's a really, as the tweet said, revealing of the mindset behind this kind of a politician, the power lust.
It is power lust, and it is horrific. I want to reiterate, I see a lot of potential problems that can come of this type of world where like a logo, next time it might be Tony the Tiger, it could be Captain Crunch tweeting back at, the president or congressman. It's just, the world is getting crazy enough. I think I want to see less of this type of thing. Let entertainment be entertainment, and let this type of thing be kept to a minimum. Although in this case, yes, I'm glad Amazon definitely pushed back. I'm just this can very easily be sort of the opposite, like a politician trying to do something good and a company sort of riling up the masses against this politician or against this policy in a way that we would find horrifying, and we would see the hundreds of thousands of retweets and likes, and we would say this is shocking. The world is getting crazier, and so there's a part of me that even at a moment like this, when I see Amazon kind of doing something pretty good, I'm saying, can we please go back to simpler times? That's kind of how I look at it.
The way we have to do it, it can't be that the way we advocate going back to simpler times is for companies that are objects of attack and to not defend themselves. It has to be that if there's a norm that we're going to enforce here or we're going to push for here, the norm has to be that the politicians do not single out individuals and companies for attack. If they say, we want to have more taxes on this industry or that industry or whatever, and we think it's unfair that some people pay low taxes, we can argue that as a matter of policy. But when it comes, argue against it as a matter of policy, but when it comes to singling out a certain corporation and saying this corporation is bad, evil, whatever, I think the corporation has to speak back. And this is not an issue like, Coca-Cola has a certain stance on black people or blackness and whiteness and so forth. And then Tony the Tiger has comes out for veganism or something. And then people argue about this one way or the other. That's brands kind of catching in on causes and political waves, and we could think about, is that bad or good or tribal or opportunistic or bad advertising, or what do we think about this? But it's something different that goes on when the company is singled out by a politician as a target for prosecution or persecution. And there, I think the company is the victim, and they have to, whether it's prudent of them to respond or not, I don't think they deserve any kind of criticism for responding.
I agree. They were directly called out, so they weren't just inserting themselves into controversy. Daniel with the super chat, thank you. Even though he's in Europe, he sent over $5 USD because he knows I prefer American money, apparently. Jonathan with $4.99. He wanted to let Daniel shine with the $5, so he sent us $4.99. He goes, "What is a logo? Parentheses company, but a group of individuals." Yeah, that's true, but I mean, the way I see it, like a logo's, a brand is there about the product itself. So, I mean, like, how far do you want to take this? Do you just want to have, Coca-Cola just be a full-time political pundit with its own show on Fox? I mean, I'm just saying, people can speak out. I'm all for that. Anyway,
Can I just say,
please.
if I had to vote between Elizabeth Warren or Donald Trump and Tony the Tiger, I'd definitely go for Tony the Tiger. Also, I have a question.
Great again.
Oh yeah, that's a nice slogan. And I do have a question for Greg. So, and I mentioned this, I think, before when we spoke, that Amazon is always under attack. It's if you just search Amazon on Twitter at any given time, look at the latest tweets, it's mostly attacks. There's this one from Robert Reich from yesterday. He says, "In just 1 minute, Jeff Bezos makes more than 3 times what the median US worker makes in a year. He became the world's richest person by exploiting his workers in horrendous conditions. Unionize Amazon." Now, this is pretty much the consensus. Jeff Bezos made his money because all of us choose to buy Amazon, and his workers choose to apply for a job there and accept the conditions. And yet, it's, you don't often hear people say something like that. People say, this is all through the voluntary exchange of individuals, and yeah, a company is made up of individuals. So, yeah, how are the two connected? And basically, what
are the two things that you're asking how they're connected?
This and Elizabeth Warren's attack that again started from this and then went on to you're criticizing me, so we'll break you up.
Well, I mean, the morality too much of our society accepts is against bigness, against large-scale success, wanting to see things equalized without thinking about why they're unequal. Some things are unequal for unjust reasons, and some things are unequal for just reasons. And without thinking about that, wanting to level things down and see equality. And having a view of where wealth comes from, that where there's great wealth, you assume or imagine that there was exploitation, whatever the facts may be. And so long as those views are in place, the largest, most successful, and often morally best companies that have benefited us all the most due to their virtue are going to have targets on their back. And that was true in the 19th century. And it's true again now in the 21st, in the 20th with Microsoft, for example, and true again now in the 21st with particularly Amazon, Google, and Facebook. And then when someone's morally disarmed and when the culture is against them and when they're a safe target and a safe scapegoat, then people feel free to let it all hang out in their criticisms of them. And sometimes they go maybe a little further than they intended, and you get to see really naked the kind of power lust that's in their thinking. And I think that's what happened here in this Warren tweet.
So to the uninitiated who might watch this episode and they don't necessarily know the context that we're coming from, we don't want political power and economic power conflated. So Elizabeth Warren should stay out of economics, and Amazon should not have any physical power to compel anyone to do anything. Amazon should be trading with people. Elizabeth Warren should be passing laws that protect the rights of the individual. And a lot of the chaos we see in the world today comes as a consequence, in one respect, of conflating economic and political power. So we're looking to divorce the government from business, other than, specifically dealing with fraud and disputes. And there's a lot to get into there, details to get into that. But that's where I think we're coming from. So the issue is not that Elizabeth Warren should have a slightly different approach to how to regulate Amazon. It's we need to divorce the government from private industry.
That's true. And yet there is something particularly ugly about the approach he's taking, even for somebody who's in the regulation business, so to speak, who's decided that we want to regulate, who's bought in, as Amazon also has bought in, to the idea that the tax code is here to manipulate the economy, right? The right view, our view, the view I'm an advocate for, is that we should have a total separation of economy and state, in the same way and for the same reasons, as Ayn Rand put it, that we have a separation between church and state. They're both the exercise of the human mind in support of values, and that requires freedom to happen. And so we need a separation. We need the government to define the relevant rights, to recognize the relevant rights and define them in law, what their implementation is, and then police that so that people, but otherwise stay out, so that people can trade on their own. And that's the right role of the government here. It should not be involved in making economic decisions. There shouldn't be any such thing as economic policy. If there have to be taxes, it should be a kind of very flat rate, just involved in what's involved in raising revenue. I don't think there do have to be taxes, but if there do, and there should be no idea of using the tax code to control or manipulate how the economy functions. But all that said, if you buy into that and you think the idea is that the government does have a role in pushing and nudging the economy in one direction or another, there's some difference between having some semblance of respect for rule of law, where you think what we're trying to do is not stick it to this company or that company or this group of companies or that group of companies, but create a system in which the incentives are such that people can make money this way and not that way, and things will either be invested in or not invested in, and so forth. There's a kind of view where you view the law as a system of abstract rules to create an environment in which people can then play by the rules, and the rules are set to achieve whatever social aim you have, and then they're enforced as objectively as it's possible to enforce rules like that. And I don't think such rules can ever be fully objective and can ever be enforced fully objectively. But someone who believes in and cares about the rule of law, even if they think there needs to be economic policy like this, would be thinking along those lines, not how can I punish Amazon or Warren Buffett or Donald Trump or help this person or help that person, but how can I set the system up so that people can then go in and do what they do and get rewarded for certain behaviors and not for others. And when Amazon's responding to Warren, right, what they're saying, and they're right in this context to say it, is, look, the system's been set up this way with certain incentives and so forth. The reason the tax code is set this way is to get people to invest a lot of money and make jobs and so forth. And that's what we did. If the tax code was set up differently, we might have acted differently. Maybe you didn't vote for this, Elizabeth, but the Congress set up this system for this reason, and here we are participating in it. And they're right to say that, just as Trump during the election, when he was talked about his tax, asked about his tax, was his right to say that he should do whatever he should do within the law to minimize his tax bill. If the tax code's wrong, it's not the fault of individual taxpayers, and they should pay what they're required by law to pay, and not, and if they want to make an extra donation, they could do that. So I think Amazon is right to say that they're following the law. What Warren is calling loopholes, she can argue with loopholes in some other situation, but the law is set up to incentivize certain things and not others, and they're participating in that system. It's Warren's whole brand of politics like Trump's brand of politics, and like Bernie Sanders' brand of politics, is a scapegoaty kind of politics. It's not about principles and how things ought to work and what's fair and how the system should be set up. It's about finding people to scapegoat. And it's the same thing if they're Mexican immigrants who you call bad hombres, or if they're millionaires and billionaires or big tech. It's what's in common here is we're not talking about what's a fair way of organizing the system. We're not talking about the principles by which things should be governed. We're calling out individuals, putting big black hats on them, and saying we should organize our government affairs to kind of get them. That's what Warren's always been about in politics. And as a matter of a political style, her rhetoric and how she does it. And that is a really bad sign and a really bad way of doing things. It's despicable, and it's good that companies are trying to push back against her when they're made the targets of this.
Could one say that that sort of initial compromise with rule of law, like that tampering with rule of law, turning it into a more of a system of engineering rather than just following abstract rules, is kind of what brought about the governance by people that have such a power lust?
Oh, for sure. I think that that's right. Thinking that we could have an economic policy like that is untenable. It's going to call this kind of person into government more and more. And but we're in a world where everybody except objectivists basically think that that's part of government's function. So Amazon, as should know better more than most, because they know where production comes from, or they have every reason to know where it comes from. But I can't blame them too much for not having an insight that nobody else has. And they're right in the context of what they do know to be pushing back against the personalization of the attacks on them, or the corporate person, the singling them out when they're not doing anything wrong. If you think this law is wrong, you could say we're going to change the law. But to single them out as some kind of bad actors because they're following the law of the land, I think is really wrong. And then on top of that, we see that what's driving this is a venom against them. If you look at how this tweet exchange played out.
Mm-hmm. And for Warren to tell Amazon, "Oh, it was your lawyers and lobbyists who brought this about," as if Amazon created the lobby system, is very disingenuous. She definitely knows that's not how it works. She knows the lobby system is a team effort. Fabian, thank you for the super chat. 5 francs, I believe. He says, recently read Liberal Fascism by Jonah Goldberg, trying to see if it's exaggerating about the fascist roots of the US left. And then something like this happens. I've read that book as well. I've recommended it. I read it a long time ago. Have you happened to read that, Greg?
I've not. I read some of his stuff in the Dispatch and listen to some of his podcasts, but I've not read the book.
Mm-hmm. It was very illuminating for me when I read it. About historical stuff. And I would actually answer Fabian and say, considering what took place in America during like Woodrow Wilson and way back in the day, I would say enough bad stuff already happened in America that this should not shock us necessarily. But it is a scary sign. Would you agree with that?
Well, again, I can't compare to what Goldberg wrote in the book, but Wilson, I think, is a real villain in American history as a politician. And now he's starting to get some pushback from the left because of his awful racism. But he was awful on a lot of issues, including that one during, decades and decades where he was praised as a progressive hero. And part of what his evil is this kind of getting the government to meddle more and more in people's lives. And we could have a whole, discussion.
Yeah. And then the picture that Goldberg paints in that book is that basically the fascists, many of them were born in America, like the movement was largely developed in America, and a lot of them had power, and they were teaching children songs about snitching on their parents if they see them wasting food, or it was very creepy what actually took place in America in the past before fascism was a dirty word. People actually thought, this is it, utopia has arrived. So once you realize just how many creepy things actually took place in America, a lot of things are less shocking. But in any case, we'll get to that maybe in another day. Thank you also, Jonathan, for the super chat. All right, let's jump over to Clubhouse, folks. Thank you, Razi and Greg. It's a privilege to have you both on the show. We're gonna jump over to Clubhouse now.
Wait, can I do a membership?
Yes. No, we're out of time. Okay, go ahead, Razi.
So, as I think Rucka has mentioned in the past, and other co-hosts, the Ayn Rand Center UK has a membership program that's the best way to support us. Membership starts at £10. We have a weekly discussion group on Rand's fiction, a weekly discussion group on Leonard Peikoff's courses, and these are throughout the year. It's not we also have the Productivity Hub, which is a project that Nikos created. We have the second one tomorrow. It's a public speaking workshop with Nikos and Ricardo Ibanez. The first one was a discussion about the book Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink. And Nikos puts a lot of effort into the Productivity Hub. I think that alone is worth the price of membership. But you do get a bunch of perks, and what I listed is just some of it, and just some of what we have now. We are growing as membership grows. We also are working to grow what we offer to members. So I encourage everybody to join that, and see you on Clubhouse.
All right, jump over to Clubhouse, folks. See you guys there. And we'll be back on Clubhouse tomorrow, Sunday, 10 a.m. or 10 a.m. Pacific time, whatever that means to you. And then back here on the Daily Objective on Monday. Thank you.
Yeah, tomorrow on Clubhouse, do you want to tell people what we have on the Weekly Objective?
Oh, yeah, we've got our good friends from the other day, Aporia Institute's very own Dolphin, Ibis,
Dolphin.
And we're hoping to get Kudwi as well, but he does not have an iPhone, so maybe he can find someone with an iPhone, and we're gonna make something happen tomorrow. Very special edition of the Weekly Objective. Thank you and goodbye.